Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Robert Bellissimo at the Movies. I am a video podcast which explores how stories are told on film. And today we're going to be talking about two Mike Leigh films, Secrets and Lies. And I always get this wrong. I always want to say something. Always want to say anything, but it's Another Year. My mistake. Another Year from 2010. And my guest today is film critic and former host of Saturday Night at the Movies, Tom Ernst. Tom, thanks again for joining me again.
Well, you're talking Mike Leigh Films, so of course I'm going to be here. You can't get much better than that.
No, he's one of my favorites as well. So just kicking it off with Secrets and Lies. I know we both, mutually picked these two films. What is it about this film that you really enjoy?
I think on a very personal level, I really enjoy films that explore adoption and finding out your real parents and discovering where you come from, etc. It's very topical. I have a lot of people that don't agree with me on my stand that it is absolutely essential to connect with your birth parents. That throws people in all kinds of conundrums, all kinds of tizzies, and I've been at the wrong end of that argument many times. So this is about that somewhat, but it's Mike Leigh. So that's a good premise for Mike Leigh. But there's more to it than that, because Mike has an ability to find the most, not just humane, but the most human. Yeah, because his characters, there's no bells and whistles to any of them. Not in their appearances, not in their jobs, not in their social standings, nothing. These people are just people, and it is. Most recently, I've only seen this recently in the casting, and I wish I should have gotten her name. If you watch the American version of The Office, there's a one woman there. She's got glasses, and I forgot her name, and she has been in other films, and she deserves to be recognized by name. But she is. I often wondered, where did they find her? She looks like the woman next door, or just anybody I'd see at the market. So the simplicity,
and that's Mike Leigh for you. That's his. Yeah. Those are his films for you.
Yeah, the simplicity of his characters and the way that they resonate so strongly. How could you possibly be interested in somebody of this sort? Somebody who works as an optometrist, or even that. It's kind of romantic, considering the occupations that many of his owns a chip truck, like you would see in Life is Sweet.
Yeah.
These are working class people with no political savvy, and no, they're not necessarily having affairs. There's nothing unique about them, and yet they're engaging.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I just love how he captured just the ordinary men and women of England and London. I know just from living there for a couple of years. I mean, just hearing people on the street or in a pub is a Mike Leigh film. Like when I watch these back, I'm like, oh my God, it's they're almost play like documentaries. I mean, it's just unbelievable how he was able to capture ordinary life and show that we already have so much drama, in our lives. We don't need, as you said, the bells and whistles and affairs and sort of more and more imaginative states. Let's just look at who these people are and explore their relationships. And it's just unbelievable how, you're right, how effective it is. Yet it seems like on the one hand, sometimes not much is going on, but then there's so much going on. Just, you look at that dinner party at the birthday party towards the end for his niece. Like if you look at the dialogue, it just seems like people exchanging pleasantries, but really it's the sister-in-law competes with the other sister-in-law. She's jealous of what they have, of what they own. Just the little digs here and there about, what you what you own or what you have, and so many things like that. I just think, wow. I mean, on paper, I can see how that would make a lot of people nervous, you know, like, how is this going to come to life? But it totally does, because especially at that point, you know these characters so well. You know why the sister-in-law is jealous of the fact that they have a house, and when showing the tour of the house, because she doesn't have anything, you know, single mother, and you know the roof is caving in, and you know, so on and so forth. You touched on something earlier where, you know, you have these arguments about people about if you're adopted, finding your birth parents. I mean, we see Hortense, played by Marianne, Jean-Batiste, doing that in the film, but he doesn't necessarily give you the psychology of why they're doing that, which I love. Makes it much more ambiguous. Why do you think, you know, from why do you think that she wants to do that, or why do you think someone that is important?
Well, I think in the case of the film, Mike Leigh does set it up by having her adopted parents die. So she is now left an orphan again as an adult. So that sort of clears the path a little more than what I propose, or what I suggest, is a natural instinct to know who you are and where you came from. So, I mean, recently there's another film critic who I've been in discussions with many times about adoption, because this film critic, well known, is also adopted, and we've shared many his stories. And recently, when I mentioned something about this need, and he very quickly said, "Well, I don't need to know, and I don't care to know." That could be legitimate. It's, you know, absolutely legitimate. But I do think we're trained as adoptees to not want to know. We're told your parents are the ones who raised you. Parents are the ones who raised you. Fine. But there is identity and stuff. So I think this is essential. Now, it's heightened in this Mike Leigh film because Hortense is Black.
Right.
And the rest of the family is not. Her father clearly was, but...
Right.
So there is, and you notice that that's not made, a big deal is not made out of that.
No, not at all.
Really.
Yeah.
Not in the first. Yeah.
Yeah.
I find that fascinating.
Me too. I mean, there certainly was no bigotry or racism from anyone that maybe on a first viewing you think that may be what will happen, but none of that happens at all. I mean, I mean, does anybody else know how to break your heart and laugh at the same time better than Mike Leigh? I mean, just that reaction in the diner when she's taught Hortense and Cynthia as her biological mother, and you can't be my daughter. I don't think I've been with a Black man. And then the look on her face when she realizes she was, and then starts to cry. I couldn't help but just burst out laughing, and here, like, this woman is sobbing. You know, it's such an unbelievable and unforgettable scene. And you know, he just has the two shots. He's not necessarily telling you where to look, and you just watch them really play that scene out. And I mean, both of them are I mean, Brenda Blethyn, I hope I'm saying that right. Blethyn.
Yeah, I was hoping you'd say it before me, because I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
I think it's Blethyn. I mean, she's remarkable, and I've seen her in some interviews, and you think that she would be like that naturally. She seems like she is this woman who works in this factory, and she is not at all. She's like this very sophisticated, dignified, you know, well-educated woman, and she can transform into this lonely, sad woman who's doesn't have much love in her life, even with her own daughter and her brother and sister-in-law, and there's something missing, you know. And obviously that later on is really when she meets Hortense, really was the missing link, which I found, you know, which I just thought he really has this way of piecing everything together with this film, because I mean, everyone is missing something in their lives, and when they realize that they're, you know, petty jealousies for each other, or they're not talking to each other for reasons that are silly and so common. I mean, how many people are jealous of their sister-in-law and have a riff and then don't talk for years? And what Cynthia has is very much what her sister-in-law wants, which is a child that she can't have. The daughter Monica wants. Obviously, there was a lack of a father figure, a lack of a family, and now she has a sister. So it's all just, it's amazing how in that one scene at the end, not that everything is like cleaned up nicely and tidy, but all those things that were missing are now possibly going to come together and give them a more fulfilling, enriching life with the people in them that they perhaps was the real root of their problems. I mean, did that pop out to you when you saw this?
Yeah, it pops out to me in almost every Mike Leigh film, and I'll go back near to the beginning of your discussion in that the seeing these actors out of character in a talk show is phenomenal, because not just Hortense, Marianne, Jean-Batiste. I mean, she has an eloquence to her in this film.
She does, yeah.
So it's not so hard to see her playing a role, but it's almost unfathomable to believe that these aren't real people.
Yeah,
I get the same effect when I watch a Ken Loach film, as Mike Leigh. Mike Leigh is a little more entertaining, but only because he has such an insight to the human condition.
Yeah.
And the way people interact. I mean, we just time and time again, and nobody seems like they're acting. Nobody seems like they all seem like they're completely caught off guard. I mean, sure, we recognize Timothy Spall. Kind of cinema from England. She was recently in this kind of bizarre horror film called In Fabric, which I recommend.
Oh. Okay, cool. That's
what very
Timothy's
bizarre.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm. And
go ahead.
Go
sorry.
ahead.
No, no. Go ahead. Your internet just froze for a minute. Was all I was going to say, but it's okay now.
Okay, good. Because I'm building up to a really, really good point here. I'm not sure what it is, but it is that what appeals to me. I'm a voyeur in some ways, right?
Yeah.
As some guy, a guy or a person who likes cinema, I'm a voyeur, and there's no. This feels really almost never uncomfortable, because I'm so taken by the performances. I'm so taken by how real and how authentic. And I just go, how do you achieve that level of as you say, it's pain, of insecurity? I've lived a lifetime, of insecurities, and rarely can pull it off that well. It's phenomenal. And I will say, I felt this way about an American. Actually, you and I kind of had this discussion before, whether it's an American film or British film. I think you would say it's an American film. I would argue British.
Oh, was that bad timing?
No, Stanley Kubrick's.
Oh, right.
Lolita.
Lolita, that's right. Yeah.
Shelley Winters does it beautifully in Lolita.
Yeah.
This fragile, broken woman. And I watched Lolita for Shelley Winters' performance and just go, how do you nail that insecurity? And it's time and time again in a Mike Leigh film. I don't know if it's his direction, if it's his free-for-all dialogue, which allows people to basically, I mean, it was nominated for Best Screenplay, but I think it was almost all ad-lib. So I don't know what the secret is. All I know is that if I was a filmmaker, I think my tactic would be to just give people a scenario and say, okay, these are the points you got to hit, and let them do it, because the result is fascinating, I think.
Well, I mean, as you said, I mean, how did they do it? And I'm sure you know, like he would spend 5 months or something rehearsing, and that's just getting the script, as you said, giving them scenarios, improvising the scenarios, and then scripting the dialogue. And that really then, as an actor myself, gives the actor the license to create it, to go anywhere they want with it. Of course, the director is going to edit it and make adjustments and have ways in which they will want to direct the performance. But I mean, I know I've had the luxury of doing that as well. And when you do that and spend that much time with the cast and that much time with the director, it starts to feel so real, as opposed to often the case where there's no rehearsal. You get on set and you're the person playing your wife, you're just meeting for the first time, you know, so you have to really go into your bag of acting techniques to make it, you know, feel so real. But I would imagine spending all that time together and just how good they all already are,
Yeah.
it's what makes it so breathtaking. And as you know, he used so many of the same people often. I mean, Leslie Manville is in, you know, probably almost every single film. Timothy Spall's in a lot of them. Brenda, Blethyn. Actually, Sexy Monkey in the chat box told me it's Blethyn. Okay, thank you, my friend. Sexy Monkey's helping us. He's from England, so he'll help us out. Yeah, he'll help us out with some pronunciation.
Well, can you ask him a question for me?
Sure.
I would like to know, because I was going to ask you how do these films play in London, England? How is Mike Leigh? What is his reputation there? I mean, is he as appreciated there as he is overseas?
It's a good question. I was talking to a filmmaker earlier when I lived there, that I worked with, and you know, we were talking about our taste in films, and he was saying, well, his girlfriend's taste is more highbrow than his, and then he mentioned Mike Leigh, and then sort of a discomfort almost to see how he portrayed people in England and London, particularly the working class or people who are you know, very poor. Not in every film, but in some of them, like in Meantime, for example. And I really got the impression he was just so uncomfortable to see how real it was, to the point where he even, you know, said, you know, well, I mean, Mike Leigh says that the people that he writes about are his audience, but he goes, well, those people don't want to just watch themselves. So perhaps, you know, us being foreigners, not that you can't relate to it. I mean, of course, it's all universal and relevant. And, you know, I mean, I know people who are just like these people, like just incredible. So they happen to be in England, and of course the culture and temperament, and there are certainly things that you'll see in England that you won't see here. But that was just an example of one person. I do know that, being, you know, working there in theater and film and television myself, you know, obviously because of the performances, people were very attracted to that. I mean, actors, directors were, you know, those are the kind of stories or performances that and the kinds of projects that actors really want to be involved in. So I know on that side of things it was embraced, but whether or not England actually embraces it, it's hard to say. I mean, he often gets, you know, BAFTA nominations, and stuff like that. But maybe Sexy Monkey will get back to us, and we'll get back to us in a minute. Does he remind you of any other filmmakers?
Ken Loach, as I mentioned.
Yeah.
I think in some ways he has an Altman approach. Altman is still was very, I think, North American in his take. There is a number of other filmmakers, I think, and they're all British too, that sort of resonate the same way as Mike Leigh does. And some of their names are escaping me now, but there is sort of a tone that I think both Mike Leigh and Ken Loach sort of
Yeah.
formulated and got off the ground, and that people are adopting and adapting. I think a lot of North American independent filmmakers have that kind of style with them, the good ones. And to a very limited way, some of Woody Allen's movies have that sort of off the cuff sort of performances. I think the ones, interestingly enough, the ones that have Mia Farrow in are remarkable in the way they're able to cast or capture on emotions or insecurities or uncertainties, and not in Allen's big comical way, of his stuttering and unable to get a sentence, his sort of Columbo-ish way of presenting himself, but more in his female characters. I think that comes through when he worked with Mia Farrow and such.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind when you say that is Hannah and her sisters. I mean,
that's the one I was thinking of. Yeah,
with her and Michael Caine, that could be right out of a Mike Leigh film.
And in particular in that film too, we're not here to talk about Hannah and her sisters, but and then my phone's ringing in the background. I apologize.
That's all right. That's okay.
It's Sexy Monkey trying to give me. Oh, you gave up my number. Also the Max von Sydow and Barbara Hershey scene.
Oh yes,
with Daniel. I forgot his name. Plays the artist.
Oh, I know who you mean from Home Alone, right?
Yeah. And
his name always escapes me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good point. I mean, even the you bringing up Shelley Winters, that's true. I never thought of that. She really could have been right at home in these Mike Leigh films. I mean, a lot of those lonely characters that she played in Pain, treated badly or rejected or tossed aside, and it's very something you particularly a character in the next film we're looking at Another Year. But before we move jump over, right there, what really popped out to me is that obviously these aren't plot driven. They're really exploring the relationships. And the only other filmmaker I know who had this in his films was John Cassavetes in having characters that really pop into the story who then vanish. Like in Secrets and Lies, you had the photographer who owned the business Timothy Spall had, and then if you're trying to figure out what the point of that is in terms of any kind of plot, you're not going to figure it out. I mean, it's just those things that happen in life, like, oh geez, isn't that so and so, and he's coming in here, he's going to give me a headache now, and you don't know what happened to that guy. You don't know. Obviously, things have gone badly for him, and he disappears. And even the other woman that he's photography who got into the car accident. It's he doesn't have any minor characters that just have a one-liner for some information about a plot or something. They suddenly become the attention, the focus of the scene, and you forget about any kind of quote unquote point or plot or story. It's just these are certainly things that could happen to these people in this film, and so why not? Did that pop out to you?
Well, it hasn't until you pointed it out, and I'm glad you did, and I'm also glad you made the alignment to John Cassavetes. I mean, that is so on the nose that I can't believe I missed it. But to your point, Leigh breaks the rules that way, right? I mean, just recently I was talking to a screenwriter yesterday. I was talking to a screenwriter, and they talked about introducing a character in something I have written, and said, "Well, that character never shows up again, and you just mention their name and never bring it up, and then that's a big sort of cinematic no-no." I went, "Really?" I thought, well, I think they are right. You don't do that, but it's not a concern that Mike Leigh would have. Absolutely not.
No, never. And I, it's amazing how conventional even people who perhaps will embrace unconventional cinema or that don't necessarily have a traditional act 1, act 2, act 3. we find that our conventions or not wanting to confuse an audience will always come back to haunt us.
Yeah.
It's just inescapable. But he really has moments like that, and I just think, why not? Because to me, those scenes, those two that I just pointed out, are really interesting and emotional. And because I feel so much for that woman. She's this beautiful woman with scars on her face who went through a windshield. And then I feel for that next guy, and I wonder what happened to him, or where's he going to go now? Is he going to drink himself to death or something along those lines? And that's it. Poof. It's just like life. Hey, where's Joe? Oh, God, I haven't seen him in 10 years. Or he died or something along those lines. It's really him and Cassavetes I've seen have done that in a number of films. I really wish more people would break the rules.
Linklater did that with Boyhood. I think that was.
Yes. I saw that once when it came out. I have to say, I love that, and I have to see it again. Was there characters like that?
Constantly. They were constant, and I really took that film I talked to a lot of my friends. My friends are documentary filmmakers, and I have quite a few of those. It really dislike that movie, and I think on the premise that it takes, they say it took 7 years to make this movie, or however, and they go, God, it takes us 7 years just to get,
funding.
Yeah. So, but what I saw there, I'm showing you my dirty towels in the background. Let me just change that. There we go. What I saw in that movie Boyhood was how every insignificant moments in our life have a prolonged effect. So there would be somebody he would meet, or somebody he was bullied. Well, we never know what happened to those bullies, or how he dealt with it. We don't know. We just know that was an experience he had, and something he carried with him.
Yeah, and I think, why not? I mean, because people always say, what is the point? But it's not about just a slick story. It's about, let's bring these people into life, or into these worlds. And if we just focus on the characters, that the quote unquote plot or story or inciting incident, I think will really work itself out. I mean, he often has your traditional quote unquote introduction of characters, where you see them at a job, you see the way they're interacting at home, which then makes sense later on. For example, even in Secrets and Lies, when you see Monica and Cynthia off the top, they're terrible to each other. And, for as much as I feel sorry for Cynthia, at the same time, you can see why her daughter Monica was always, responding in a negative manner towards her, because she makes her feel as if she was a burden, as if she was a mistake. Even that scene where she has a boyfriend and she says, you should make sure you go on the pill. I what happened to me when I didn't have the pill, because she forgot it. And why would you say that to your own kid, But it's just because she always means well, but it's just her ignorance and her insensitivity and her lack of education that let those things, slip out. So, and then later on, it makes so much sense when everything comes out about Hortense, and the daughter just calls her a slag, tears into her. Even before that, telling her to fuck off and stuff. Just it's quite awful. But I think it really comes from a real insensitivity and a lack of introspection and feeling for for one another. Did that pop out to you, the way he introduces characters, which then that behavior serves a real purpose later on in the story?
I think that discussion that you brought up has me thinking of Another Year, and specifically, and so when we get to that, I would actually like to circle back to this, because I think that's even better represented, or serviced better, in the interaction between Leslie's character in what's her name, Anne? Mary in Another Year with
Oh yeah,
with
yeah.
the son's girlfriend, which is a very defining moment. But
Right.
so I do think that, but I'm wondering, I wonder if I want to challenge you on the idea of it being just merely insensitivity. I'm sure you're right, but part of me thinks that there isn't. It's not just, it's a defense, maybe. Insensitivity plays into it, but it's not just ignorance. Um, it all balances from a kind of a treatment that they're responding to, or the way they interpret the way people are interacting with them, their life experience getting confused with the
Yeah.
reality of what's happening. Although what's reality, but that's another discussion. I also want to ask you if you think maybe David Lynch, particularly in Straight Story, doesn't have somewhat of that same aspect of introducing a character and then moving on, not
You,
hanging out with that character for too long.
that's a film of his I still haven't seen, and I've had people tell me for years to see Straight Story. And Lynch is a director I've never could quite get into, so I think that's why I've always been hesitant to see it. But of course, people tell me it's a Lynch film that doesn't feel like a Lynch film, so maybe it feels like a Mike Leigh film.
Yeah, it is an astounding movie,
Yeah.
and I think it's in my top 10 flawless films list.
Yeah, you know what? I really do have to visit. I think when you came on the show a couple of months ago, that was one that we perhaps had discussed talking about. So I will have to visit that. But what I really appreciate that you had a different take on why Cynthia responds the way you did, and I think that's such a testament to Mike Leigh's not giving the audience a clear motivation or a clear backstory, a psychological backstory about why they are the way they. I mean, obviously you get a strong impression, but it's not so spelled out like when you'll see in a lot of mainstream films. If a character is reacting in a certain way, which is outside of the behavior that the audience is already knows about them, then there's often a scene where they tell some other character why they did that, or because of this experience I had. But these people are not necessarily articulate in that sense, or really know why they do what they do.
Yeah.
Which I find, so that must be so hard to write. I mean, when I look at Cassavetes, I mean, how do you, because often I'm not a screenwriter, but I would imagine you just want your characters to say what they think, what they feel, what they mean, what they want, and to not do that, but yet have all that, because if the audience sort of spends time with the characters enough in order to really see it, not that it doesn't pop out in somewhat of an easy way, but that must be, even if it's improvised and then scripted, that must be extremely hard. I don't know how. I mean, what do you think?
I think it would be extremely hard. I think
Yeah.
that that's why sometimes when you see best screenplays and you go, but there's not much dialogue in there or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think the instinct as a writer would be to explain yourself and to refrain from that, which be
Exactly.
such discipline. How do you represent that in a nod, or how do you? And I think that too. Like I've tried my hand at screenwriting, not successfully, but I mean, I know what I want to get across. So do I say they do it this way? Am I that exact? I think part of it is trust. It has to be trust in the director and trust in the actor.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, as you were saying that, I couldn't help but think of that moment where Timothy Spall is talking to his wife about his sister, and there's no big speech, but everything in his behavior said so much about, well, she gave me a lot of love, she tried, and he looks so sad, but he says so little. And you see that the way his wife is reacting in sort of a way in which she is hesitant or not really agreeing with him about what she's saying, what he's saying, Timothy Spall is saying about his sister. But right there, you know how he feels about her. You know that what he thinks of her. You know that he's going. And as soon as the next scene, he stops at her house. It makes total sense just on a close up of his face, him looking emotional and saying a few things about her. I mean, it's quite remarkable. It's those things that we are inexpressible. I mean, sometimes when I see directors capture that, I'm like, wow, I think you're right. I think it really comes down to trust and the performances and perhaps the audience too. I mean, trusting that they will get involved.
Yeah, the audience has some responsibility in all cases, and I do think occasionally when people say, well, that movie isn't good. Well, I actually hate it when people say that movie isn't good. Even as a kid, I used to say, "You mean you thought the movie wasn't good?" The audience has a part, brings something to the film, and they're participants. So if they're not willing, sometimes the audience is wrong. Sometimes when there's a great movie, like Cassavetes is a perfect example.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. And you know what? You got to get on the right track. You got to figure out what's going on. And this is why I love writing about film. I love writing about film because it gives me an uninterrupted ability to sit down and think about why I like or dislike something and put it down and argue it out. Sometimes in an offhanded, maybe curt way that I think is clever and usually isn't. Or sometimes in a very thoughtful way, and that's usually more successful. But either way, that's why I love reading good film criticism or even good film writing. It doesn't have to be critical, because it gives me insight.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've never liked. I forgot what film it was. There's a film that was very popular, Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid. Never really liked it. Never, ever. Yeah. And the Sting, I may have told this story on your show once already, but
I remember the Sting coming up with someone, possibly. Yeah, it must have been you, me. Or it's come up a couple of times, maybe.
Sorry for repeating myself, but
no, go ahead.
The more I read about the film, the more I enjoyed it. Now going back to it, I think again I'm going, it's okay. But the more I read about a film, the more insight I read about it, it's so strong. I could remember reading about Paths of Glory before seeing the movie. And had I not read what I read about it, it's particularly the scene where the soldiers are being marched up for execution, which immediately caught my attention anyway. Reading about that scene and what that scene meant and how Kubrick approached it resonated with me. So I watched the whole film with that in mind. People generally like to say, I don't like to read anything about a movie before I see it. I'm kind of different. I like going in with some ammunition. I'm glad you brought that up because I feel more or less the same way, because when I struggle with something, my first instinct is, well, let me see what someone said about it, because it will enrich the experience for me. A director like Mike Leigh and Cassavetes, who are so challenging, certainly to go into a Ray Carney book, for example, on what he wrote about Cassavetes. I mean, it just made me see those films in a whole new light, just in terms of how we, the audience, process stories by sort of wanting to put our feet up and have everything fed. How do you watch the ones that aren't that? So it's almost like training yourself. It absolutely is. It's like acquiring a taste.
Exactly.
For something. And you may say, why would I bother to train myself to like Scotch? But I tell you, once you like Scotch, it's a treat, right?
That's exactly it. Good analogy.
Yeah, and I think that's the way it is with cinema. It's, you know, not to be, well, reading, for example. I read a certain type of book before I went to university, and going to university, I took English courses and even an English class in high school, and they made me read these books that I would never have gone near. And I loved the fact that we would study them, and then I all of a sudden gained an appetite. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I hope that we're not coming across as being elitist in any way. Because I don't think any of these things, good film, good books, are out of reach of anybody.
Right.
But I just think it's an accustomed taste, and once you find that needle, like, it's funny that you said Mike Leigh, like, you know, how difficult Mike Leigh is, and John Cassavetes. You said that, and I'm thinking to myself, and I'm listening to you, and I'm going, they aren't difficult. But of course they're not difficult. We found the way to drop the needle into the groove, and it plays for us.
Yeah, and then they're not difficult at all.
No, and there's no going back. Once you hear the. Do you remember Radiohead, the band Radiohead?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you remember the album Kid A?
Oh yes, yeah.
Okay. I love that album.
So do I.
You know, I read a review once that says you will not like this album until you listen to it 11 times.
Yeah.
Did you read the same review?
Well, I didn't read something like that, but I didn't perhaps read that exact review, but I remember at the time people, because my family and my cousins and brother are all even now big Radiohead fans, and I remember because that was, you know, just after OK Computer. I remember, look, my cousins and brother are older than me, so they were like, just keep listening to it, and then sure enough, it's an acquired taste. Well, and it was just a 180 for them, you know.
Completely. And I was a huge Radiohead fan, and I'm going, this is completely inaccessible. Yeah. And then it's like one of those pictures you look at and you stare at, and the 3D image pops out finally. And once the 3D image pops out, you know, those then you can see it, you know. Yeah. But before you can't see it, and it was like that. All of a sudden I can't listen to Kid A and not hear the melody. You know, there's a song, there's a hook, there's everything.
It's all there.
But it's not there when you first listen.
Yeah, exactly.
Completely.
Yeah. It's because you can't get over the like, where's the convention? Where's the you know where's the verse? Where's the chorus?
Where's the chorus? What do I sing along to? You know?
Exactly. And then you find, well, wait a minute, actually all that stuff is there. It's just maybe a little messier.
It's a little messier, and it's buried. And then once your ear attunes to it, you can't not hear it. And it's incredibly popular. Popular style, very, very poppy is what I mean.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, you know, the same goes for film. And I think anything original seems so chaotic at first, but it's just a matter of, you know, going back to it, and if it lingers in you enough, hopefully you people are attracted enough to do so. Obviously, someone like Cassavetes, you know, it was another. With the exception of a few of his films doing really well at the box office, it was another, you know, 20 or 30 years before people really saw how brilliant something like, you know, The Killing of a Chinese Bookie is. But that's just the nature of art, and people trying something that is different, and, you know, continuing on building on the language of film that we all already know. Actually, that question you asked before, he did answer. Sexy Monkey has left, but he did answer the question. He said Mike Leigh is highly regarded here, but his characterizations are, let's say, wide strokes, either very lower class or very upper class. There seems to be no middle ground. I don't know about that. I think that may be a good segue into the next film.
Yeah, I agree.
Another year, because the Tom and Jerry, I love that, Jim Broadbent and Ruth Sheen, who I adore, both of them. They are the sort of that middle ground that Sexy Monkey speaks of there. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, they're accomplished.
Yeah,
They're doc. Do you notice that a lot of African Americans or African Brits or I don't know,
I think that's right. Yeah,
are doctors in his
in
films?
his that's true. Yeah, that's right. Off the top,
Hmm.
the pregnant
Doctor, yeah,
doctor. Yeah, that's
and
true.
then the
Yeah, he does have that.
optometrist,
Yeah, the optometrist. Yeah,
yeah. Anyway,
that's a good point. He does sort of put them in a position, at least with their career, as being a more accomplished or well
yes.
educated, let's say, position. Yeah, it's a good point. I hadn't thought of that. That's true.
Well, and also from my perspective as a 60 plus a white dude, I watch that film and I see Imelda Staunton's character as in the opening of Another Year. I almost did one up on your almost a year. I almost did Another World, which would have been really off.
There's something about this title. I always want to say anything, but anyways, yes,
Yeah.
Another Year. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. And also, I practice saying Jim Broadbent, not Ed Broadbent.
Oh right.
Yeah.
Oh my, I know. It's gotta. They're not so much tongue twisters, but for some reason they come out in different ways.
Yeah.
In my mouth,
my synopsis connect to something else. So anyway, watching Imelda Staunton in that scene, remarkable scene, and I've met Imelda Staunton. And actually spent some time with her, and she too is a rather sophisticated woman, and you would not think so from this movie.
Yes. No.
And I'm waiting for the moment where she's going to make some kind of disparaging remark to this doctor because she is a person of color. And that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen. It's not an issue in Mike Leigh's films.
Yeah.
Whether that is, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I know, I didn't really think it through, but I certainly noticed that, I wonder if that was an intentional choice or it just kind of happened that way. I mean, did you ever read anything about that or?
No, I don't think it is a cognitive choice to buck the expectations of a white audience. I don't know if Mike Leigh thinks of his audiences as white or of color, whatever.
Yeah.
Although he doesn't deal a lot with West Indies people or East Indians, but I just don't think that's an issue for him. I think that the culture is the culture, and I don't know. It would be really interesting if ever I got to meet Mike Leigh. I suppose that would be a question I would ask, but he could be cantankerous, I think, about talking about his films, as I've seen in some interviews. So I don't know.
I've noticed that as well. Yeah.
So I don't know if that would set him off or not.
Hard to say. So you, I was going to ask you that. So you've interviewed some people, some of the actors who have worked with Mike Leigh over the years.
Well, Imelda Staunton, certainly, she was very funny, and I interviewed her because of this movie, Secret and Lies, and she happened to she happened to be in L.A. And anybody else, I think I have. And I would just have to sit down and sort of figure out who they are. It's tough. I didn't do a lot of Brits.
Okay.
I did mostly American and Canadians. A few Australians, but not a lot of Brits. Just didn't have the opportunity, right? So,
was there anything she said particularly about working with Mike Leigh that you remember?
She told me a great story about Vera Drake, which maybe actually might be a story everyone knows, but at the time I didn't know it. So in Vera Drake, you know the film Vera Drake?
Oh yeah, very good one as well.
Very good film. And in the film, she's washing the dishes with the family, and the door bell rings. She opens it, and the police and they arrest her. Remember that scene? Maybe not, but it happens.
I do, yeah. I remember her getting, when they get found out and they're all together, the family's together, and she gets arrested, yeah.
So when they shot that scene, according to Imelda Staunton, when they shot that scene, the doorbell rang. It wasn't supposed to ring. She kind of thought, stayed in character, go, I guess I'll answer it. And the cops came in. Nobody on the set in that scene knew
Oh,
that she was going to get arrested at that moment.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah.
And
Well-
so that's the story she shared about that. And it came close on the heels of the story, which I think is kind of legendary now, in the Secret and Lies, when Hortense and Kathy, sorry.
Yeah, Kathy, the mother,
Kathy.
right? Yeah.
The mother. Is it Kathy?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, Cynthia.
Cynthia.
Brenda Blethyn.
Yeah.
Cynthia, yeah.
So when Hortense and Cynthia, they never met each other. So Hortense,
I read that too. Yeah.
yeah, she didn't know she was meeting a white woman, and Brenda didn't know she was meeting a black woman.
Yeah.
And so their reactions are legitimate.
Yeah. No, I love. I love that he had that he designed his films in such a way that could allow for that if he chose to do it. I mean, and it's true. I mean, well, why not just not? It's not like it was anything inappropriate or violent or that would be really crossing the line. But hey, someone knocks on the door. It's the cops, and that's probably why she reacted in such a what the because it really
Yeah, can you imagine?
Yeah, it really sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, she could, for all we know, she could have thought, what's happened? That somebody on set done something terrible for being arrested.
Yeah.
Who knows what she thought?
he must have had enough trust that she'd go with it. Which I can imagine, because I know Scorsese and De Niro, I know they did stuff like that too.
Yeah.
You get to a point where you work with someone so much that that they won't just say cut or break character, or they'll go with it. I can remember just a quick story. I was working the only time I ever worked as a first AD on a short film. We were at the Hotel Waverly, and I'm sure the kind of residents at the Hotel Waverly. But they were doing a scene, the two actors, and it was quite loud. And the people working there knew we were filming in there. And someone knocked on the door and started screaming, if whoever is hitting someone in there or going nuts, if you continue, I'm going to call the cops. Went insane, and the actors stopped to say we're filming. And I remember at the time, why didn't you? I didn't say anything, but in my head I'm like, that would have been such a moment.
Yeah, absolutely. What did the director think? Did the director think, oh geez, man, we could have used that?
No, you know what? No, unfortunately not. The reaction was sort of, I think perhaps your panic comes in, with certain people, and to diffuse, particularly when conflict arises. I imagine, at least from what I've seen in people and even myself, is to let's stop it. Let's stop the conflict. So even he was rushing to explain, but in my head, I'm like,
yeah, missed opportunity. Yeah, maybe their instincts were right there. Yeah,
perhaps with that place.
Yeah, I don't know how comfortable with you are going on topic of other films, but on the topic of unpredicted scenes that really work. My favorite is I think it was not Harry Dean Stanton, Harvey Keitel was in a minor movie, which he was the biggest star with Patrick Dempsey, called The Pickup Artist. And,
yeah. With Robert Downey Jr., right?
Was he in that as well?
Yeah, with that's James Toback, isn't it? Mid-80s? Yeah. Downey Jr., I believe, is the lead, but you're right. Keitel has a small part in that.
Okay, no, I'm thinking of Patrick Dempsey is the lead in this.
Oh, okay. It must be Patrick Dempsey and Harvey Keitel. Well, now I'm intrigued. But what's the story?
The story is, I thought it was a pickup artist. Maybe it wasn't. He's a gangster. Big surprise. Keitel's a gangster. And Dempsey is supposed to be sort of in a scene where he's with Keitel, and he's not going to back down, but he's scared, right? Because this guy could kill him.
Right.
So the scene is Dempsey opens the door for Keitel and tells him to get out of the hotel room. So Dempsey opens the door, tells Keitel's character to get out of the hotel room. Keitel walks up to the door, slams it shut, opens it, and says, "I open my own doors," and walks out, completely improvised.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I just thought,
that.
yeah, it's amazing. It was this amazing part. The look on Dempsey's face, and just the idea that you or the Marlon Brando scene in All Quiet on the Waterfront.
Oh, yeah, the gloves, you mean?
The glove scene. I love that. I love that. And I could watch that scene over and over and over again, just because, for those who don't know, Eva Marie Saint drops a glove. Is it Eva Marie Saint?
Yeah.
And then he picks it up, and she thinks, okay, that's good, we're going with this. But instead of giving it back, he tries it on.
Yeah. Yeah, I love, it's funny because I heard conflicting things about that. I heard that it happened in rehearsal and then they kept it. But then I've heard that it happened in the shot. You never know what's true, right? But either way, often, it was not, it wasn't something they jotted down. It was certainly something that happened either when they were filming or, during the rehearsals. But yeah, I'm not surprised Mike Leigh would do that in his films. I mean, just they all so often feel like accidents. Like he just not accidents in a bad way, but capturing something that was not planned. They just seem so unplanned. But how? So this is fairly recent. This is only from 2010. I remember seeing it in the movie theater as well. I mean, what this is quite different than Secrets and Lies. I mean, what is it about this film that you like?
Again, I really like Leslie Manville's performance.
Me too.
And these are the things, that fragility, that is so. I just find it amazing how you can capture that, and I can watch that forever.
Yeah.
So she's the one who holds me to the film.
Me too.
Probably if it was just Ruth and not Ed. See, I knew I was going to do it. Ed and Jim.
Jim,
in the film.
Jim Broadbent,
yeah, and Ruth Sheen. It would be less so entertaining for me, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I agree.
She brings all the elements, all the tension to the film. She brings the frustrations to the film. I mean, every dinner that she shows up to, always a car story, always a story nobody wants to hear, and goes on.
I love it.
On. Yeah, and it's just. I think there is one moment in Another Year that I think rings just a little bit false, and it comes from Ruth Sheen when Leslie Manville's character Mary,
yeah,
when Mary is upset at the new girlfriend, who she as inappropriately has affections for their son,
their son Joe,
son Joe.
Yeah.
And so Ruth Sheen gives a knowing look to both Joe and his girlfriend, and that's the only moment I see the acting, I see the direction in that split second. But other than that, I think everything is authentic. Everything feels natural. And before that, I was actually in my mind formulating the thought that the film works not just because of Leslie Manville's projection of this character, but people's reaction to her. And the reaction was so normal, and nobody needed.
I think Tom's
to do that the audience is annoying, and there I am.
Sorry, I think there you go.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back now. Yeah, you just froze in the last. The last thing I heard you say was nobody needed. If that rings a bell.
Nobody needed to roll their eyes to let us know that
That's
how
true.
this character was affecting people. So
Yeah.
when that scene does, when she kind of looks knowingly at them, and it's a one shot of her, so the camera was set up to get it. It was
Yeah.
unnecessary. And that's the only false note I think I could find in that movie.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think I think if anything, perhaps most people would try to be, looking away. But yeah, I think the eyes were to, because the audience already knows Mary has romantic feelings towards the son, and that she's reacting with such hostility towards the girlfriend because of her jealousy. So to have all these looks back and forth, I agree, was unnecessary. I did like in that scene though when with the new girlfriend, she sort of starts to almost compete with her, because when she finds out what she does for a living, helping elderly people, then she turns to Ruth Jean to say, "Well, we do that too, don't we?" And Ruth Jean, "No, we don't do that."
Yeah.
I love that, and that's so. I've seen people do that so often, just finding ways to put down someone's accomplishment, even if it's a little accomplishment. I can remember even as an actor doing a commercial years ago for Nissan, and I was working with this actor in a play and mentioning it was Nissan. And I think for him, he thought that was perhaps a bigger deal. And then I mentioned it was the dealership of 401 Dixie, and then he's like, "Oh, it's the dealership," as if to say, "No, it's not as good as you're putting it out to me." And that is such a Mike Leigh.
Yeah.
I mean, his characters have, particularly when it comes to what you own, what you have, what you do, he always has this very subtle competitiveness and jealousies, and people don't necessarily say it, but it's in their passive aggressive behavior and their offhand comments, and that is so true of humans. I mean, was that something that popped out to you?
Absolutely, and Secret Eyes as well. In this movie, I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier, that how do you script that, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're writing practice, she's jealous. No, you don't need to. The thing I wanted to say though, and it was something that you said in about Secret and Lies, and I can't remember exactly what the point was, but it reminded me. I know this much. It reminded me that I did not necessarily. I didn't like that Mary had affections or romantic affections so blatantly for her best friend's son. I thought that was completely inappropriate, embarrassing, and difficult. But I did not like the girlfriend either.
She's so annoying, but
so annoying. Like, I can't believe that the parents liked her. Like, it was like, oh, good Lord, this woman. She, that whole bit about pretending to hang herself with her scarf and all the faces and gesturing she makes when she finds that Mary is in the other room, and the over politeness and this infusing just this chatability and I don't know. I'd have lasted 10 minutes with her.
Sorry, Tom, 1 sec. I think it's actually my internet. Just give me one. I'm just going to fix something.
I feel like I should talk. I feel like I'm on air and no one can see anyone but me. And if that's the case, you're looking at a frozen image of Robert. Oh, a third image of Robert is about to appear.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. There's another image of you. Do you see it?
Yeah, I don't know why there's another image. That's
There
strange.
should always be. There should always be more than one image of you.
It's me in the dark, I guess.
I feel like I'm on a CNN news panel. There we go.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
There we go. You know what it was? I realized I was on my data, and then I was like, oh, that's why I'm getting a message. My data is run out. So I went back on my home internet. So sorry about that. That's my fault. But we were talking about you were talking about the girlfriend being so annoying was the last thing I heard.
Yeah, I just like, I mean, the antics that she went through when she knew Mary was in the other room, and the way she sort of infused this enthusiasm and bombastic humor, really. I thought she was sort of a lead up to the Sally, great actress, British actress, Happy Go Lucky.
Oh yeah, God, what the name? I know exactly. She was in The Shape of Water.
Yeah, Sally.
Sally Hawkins. Sally Hawkins. Yeah. Yeah.
She's kind of a lead up to that character, I thought.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. And this was just after that. I wonder if he considered getting her. Maybe for some reason she couldn't do it. Yeah, she seemed like
I don't think Sally Hawkins would have worked as girlfriend for Joe.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't think she's not quite that annoying. Well, she's not really annoying at all.
No. Hawkins is great. Hawkins is another one who can just nail a performance.
Yeah.
She was fantastic. I guess maybe that's what made me think of Woody Allen, because Hawkins' character was so fantastic. I always forget the name of that movie. That Kate Blanchett.
Kate Blanchett and Alec Baldwin. Yeah, the one I don't know why I'm blanking as well.
I always blank on it. And with a surprisingly great performance from Booyah guy, the comedian.
Oh God, we're both blanking today. I know exactly who you mean.
Yeah.
Ford
Fairlane dude.
Yeah. No, I know. For some reason I'm also blanking, but I know who you mean.
Yeah.
It's sort of, I love how awkward those scenes are, because Mary can just, she just cannot hide how she feels, even though she's jealous. It shows like a sore thumb, and then she's getting mad at her, she's hostile. I really love scenes in films where they're both funny and sad and all embarrassing, all in the same time, because it's just like, oh my God, you almost want to stop the action and say, what are you doing? Your friend is going to know exactly why you're doing it. They're going to know why you're doing it. But I think it just goes to, the naive nature of a lot of his characters, not having the introspection to know how they're, coming across. I don't mean that as a judgment. It's just, I find those kind of characters fascinating to see.
My daughter calls that secondhand embarrassment. She can't watch them. And quite often I'm in a situation, usually on those candid camera type of shows, where I am so embarrassed for the person that I can't watch it. But in these films, I can't not watch it. And I'm thinking to the scene where Mary gets in between Ruth. I'm calling her Ruth. That's the actor's name. Yeah,
Jerry. Jerry. Tom and Jerry.
It gets in between Jerry and Joe, and says, "Never get in between, a mother and her son." And then starts saying, "Joe, we should go for a drink with your mom. Why don't you come out?" Or maybe your mom doesn't need to come. And there's just a moment from Ruth, from Jerry.
Yeah, it's never spoken about, which I also really liked.
Mm-hmm. And it's so different than her eye connecting scene when Ruth is being belligerent. I'm sorry, when Mary is being belligerent. So, and it's so subtle. It's just like it's so understated that I could see how, if you're not invested in the characters, if you're not invested in the story, you're going to miss it.
Yeah,
and it's a real sort of a paradox, is that in order to get the story, you have to get the story. Do you know what I mean? You have to get the story. You have to be invested.
Yeah, you have to really. Yeah, you have to be interested in the people. Because it's not heavy, like I've been saying. It's not that we've both been saying. It's they're not heavy on plot. They're really character driven. Did you think that Joe had any feelings towards? Was there anything that you felt?
No, he was polite.
About that. You think he was being polite?
Yeah, and I think we see that in the scene. He jokes with her.
Yeah, he jokey, flirty. You know, he has the same sense of humor as his parents, which I really like. They're all very quick. You know, I really like those moments of just the back and forth. You know, also very polite, very compassionate, knowing that someone's just going off on a story and. You know, like Mary with the car and being able to just listen and offer, you know, some kind of, you know, basically compassion or interest, whereas some people might just, you know, tune out.
Yeah, I would have tuned out. And we see that a lot in Tom's character.
Yes.
Who will give these offhanded comments that hits it on the head.
Yeah.
But you know, Mary can go, oh, Tom, you know, whatever. And while Jerry goes, Tom. So there's an, oh, Tom. And then there's Tom. There's two different reactions to the same thing. I
love that. Yeah. It's like, stop, you're being inappropriate.
Yeah. And then Tom's just going, well, I'm just kind of, you know, pointing out what's there without being too blatant about it. And then even with when they arrive and she's in the front room unwelcomed, you know, neither of them, you know, Jerry says, "Oh, what are you doing here? Be nice to be called." And what does Tom say? Tom says, "Let me get off my boots. Let me take the boots off." You know, just give me a moment to process this. I wonder. I'm sure.
I love that about them.
Yeah, I want to talk about case we're coming to a close or something. I don't know what the time is like, but I'm sorry. This is your interview, but I really hope.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, the character Tom's best friend, and his
Ken. Yeah, I was going to ask about that. Yeah,
I knew you would. I just got like super anxious and super wanted to get there because I think he's an interesting character because
really interesting.
He is definitely broken.
Yeah.
Now there was a scene in the garden where he says something about someone dying, and I realized I must have missed something. Who did he lose in his life? Do you remember? He starts just before he starts crying.
Well, that's funny that maybe that went over my head. I remember he was talking about his job not going well, but yeah, now you're right. Now it certainly wasn't a wife. I could see sort of like Mary in the sense that they're both lonely. Maybe if someone in the chat box has seen this film, who knows who Ken was talking about? He was talking about someone dying. Yeah. Was it no, it wasn't a parent. No,
I don't know, but it was obviously someone that caused him a great deal of pain. And for some reason, I thought maybe it was a son. And I didn't catch that, but I don't think he ever was married. Well, you don't have to be married, but anyway, I was a little annoyed with Ken for pursuing Mary when she gave him nothing.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, she gave.
She did
give him something. Yeah, and there was no mistaking. There was no misreading where she was coming from.
She was so hostile, like that. Like she was being flat out rude, and that whole see again where I laugh, even though it's not funny, but it is at the same time.
Well, it's interesting that both these films that we're talking about, as are described in IMDb as comedies.
Yeah, or black comedies, something along those lines. Yeah,
and that's certainly when I first saw Another Year. I saw the comedic aspect to it. I saw it less so now. It could be an age thing. I don't know, but it's less so now. It's less funny now. It's a little more real.
Right.
But I do think it's interesting, though, that of what the characters don't hear. And one of the things they didn't hear, one of the things that, what's his name? Ken. One of the things Ken doesn't hear, or Kent with a T. One of the things Kent doesn't hear is Mary say he could be good looking. So
that's
to me,
right.
when I heard that, I kind of went, well, Kent does kind of have a chance if he got himself together. I don't know. That's...
could be. Well, I wondered about that as well, because as soon as she meets everybody in that scene, she kisses everyone hello, hugging, and then she just goes up to him and not even a handshake, and she's like, "Oh, hi, Ken." And then after that, she's hostile towards him. But then she talks fondly about him to Ruth Sheen. Well, maybe if he got his shit together, he's also a very overweight guy, big drinker, but then again, so was she, right? But I'm glad you pointed out that scene in the car when she drops him off. I also love that she was trying every way to not be alone with him, and I've seen that happen so many times where a guy is just not getting the message that this woman is not interested, and still making a move and going too far and being totally inappropriate and obnoxious. I mean, I love the directors who can capture things that happen all the time in bars, on the street, family gatherings, picnics, and like in this case, lunch or dinner. But you're right. He just does not, or he refuses to see it, or it's his own, his own desperation.
You don't see him again after that.
Yeah, his own desperation, takes over.
And interesting in the greeting scene where she does not greet Kent as affectionately. Then she sits down, and there's the other guy beside her, and she goes, "Oh," she says hi. She goes, "Oh, I thought you're going to skip over me." And she goes, "Oh, I'm sorry." And it sounds like it legitimately sounded like she was supposed to say something to him in the film and forgot to, and and it just sounded so real, but it's appropriate because she was so fixated on skipping over Kent that she couldn't even think about being offended or warm towards the other person in the room.
I love those awkward exchanges. And again, it's those things that we see play out time and time again. I mean, you can immediately see how people somewhat feel about each other anyways. From a greeting, from a hello at a gathering, from the way in which they embrace if they haven't seen each other for a while. I mean, he has that in Secrets and Lies and in Another Year. I mean, even with the sister-in-laws in Secrets and Lies, as soon as the door opens, the way they embrace, it's so awkward. You see that they don't necessarily get along in the way in which they say hello. So it's just full of that kind of behavior. I'm just going to go to the chat box because some comments have been jumping in. Sebastian Badaru, I hope I'm saying that right. I believe I've spoken to you before, Sebastian, on Cassavetes group. He says, Robert, you have to watch The Straight Story. It feels more like the Sean Penn movie Into the Wild. Yeah, I will. I am going to see it. I love Into the Wild, so that's a good point.
Yeah, I hate Into the Wild. So, so I would say they're not at all alike. But anyway.
Okay. That's another riff. We'll do a double feature one day, maybe. Guy, he says, she's jumping a bit late into the conversation, but wanted to ask both of us, who do you think the greatest directors nowadays? I personally believe Lynch and Lars von Trier are the best of the bunch. What do you think, Tom? People not working today.
Not working today?
Or no, just who are the directors working today that we feel are the best?
I think Paul Thomas Anderson, absolutely. I think there's I think Brad Anderson has some certainly hasn't always made it to the bar, but I will see anything by Paul Anderson. Lots of it fails, but there's something interesting about Paul Anderson that I love. But so sorry, did I say Brad Anderson? So
Brad
Paul,
Anderson, yeah.
yeah. And so it's like the Anderson family. I'm all over. And who else is there's so many that are just splendid. There's a few directors. I would have said Christopher Nolan, except I haven't seen Tenet and just can't get myself to go see Tenet.
Same here.
Yeah, it's other names are going to creep up to me as we chat, but yeah.
I really like well, he's also been around for a while, but Noah Baumbach is someone I really like.
Yeah.
I mean, he sort of is similar to someone like Mike Leigh, but he's more interested in intellectuals and more sophisticated types and their flaws, which also work in both its complexities and black humor and snobbishness. And I thought the Meyerowitz stories was phenomenal. I don't know if you saw that.
No, I missed it, but I did I like the Marriage Story, which was by him, wasn't it?
I like that as well, but I thought it didn't compare to Meyerowitz stories, in my opinion. Yeah, and funny enough is that the Meyerowitz stories was largely ignored.
Yeah,
but I thought it was far superior. I also really like Ava DuVernay. I don't know if you saw that series she did on the Central Park 5. This Is Us. Oh my God, it's not easy to watch. They were wrongly accused of raping a woman. I'm sure people know, in the 80s, and went to jail for it. They were like 16, 17, and it's tough to see. But she's a phenomenal director. But the funny, actually, I'm glad Sebastian just said the Safdie brothers. I love them as well. I think. Oops, someone's calling me. It always freezes up when someone does that, so I have to stop it. The Safdie brothers. I don't know if you saw Uncut Gems, Tom.
Yeah, I love that movie.
Me too. Yeah, I there's a few of their early films I haven't seen, but I love that, and I loved the one they did with Robert Pattinson before that. The title I'm blanking on, but it's funny when people say, "Who do you like now?" My brain always goes to the past. I don't know about you, Tom. I guess nowadays directors are they're not making as many feature films, or they're going on TV and stuff. So I kind of get lost in and who's even working. So I don't know if you have that same experience.
Sure. And a lot of the directors that I absolutely love have gone on to do more commercial things that aren't as satisfying, like David Fincher.
Yeah, that's true.
And so I get muddled with that, and Christopher Nolan, and Brad Anderson. Paul Thomas Anderson, not yet. I don't think. He still sort of remains.
He's great. Yeah. I agree. He's hit or miss, because some of his films, I'm like, what?
Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yeah.
No misses for me.
Oh, really?
Brad Anderson is a hit and miss, but Paul Thomas Anderson. Oh well, except I did have problems. Although I would love to see it again, because they're at the TFCA Film Critics Association, it's adored the Raymond Chandler ish thing with Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah, that was one I hated. I don't know.
I find that really hard.
Yeah,
I have to go back to that.
Yeah, that's the only one I pretty much love his other ones. Even though Phantom Thread, I also couldn't quite care for, but the other ones, Boogie Nights and Magnolia, and particularly There'll Be Blood and The Master, I think those are just masterpieces.
Yeah, I love Phantom Thread because it was such a.
I got to give it another chance. Yeah. I really got to give it another. I don't know why I just didn't quite take to it. Of course, Leslie Manville, who we're talking about, largely is in both Secrets and Lies and Another Year, and she got an Oscar nomination for Phantom Thread. And to me, I mean, it's criminal that something like Another Year, I mean, not that I really agree with awards in general, but how she would go ignored unless
Didn't
it was
she
a
get
Hollywood
nominated?
film.
Didn't she get nominated in that?
You know what? From what I read, it was really only the script that was
Okay,
nominated.
all right. I always thought Leslie oh, no. It's Michelle Jean-Batiste who got nominated
for Secrets and Lies.
Secret and Lies, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those odd things. But the other thing I was going to point out about this film, and we already talked about it in relation to Secrets and Lies, is again this element of a character. In this case, the very first scene, the first character we see is the woman from Vera Drake. I always get her name.
Her Imelda Staunton.
Imelda Staunton. She is someone who is the first person we see, and I think the film's going to be about her. And sure enough, you see her in another scene, and gone. It goes into Ruth Sheen, but to me, it informs so much about why Ruth Sheen was so outwardly compassionate, was so patient, was so empathetic, because she was a counselor. Her job was obviously affected very much who she also was in life, and the way in which she was interacting with this woman who was depressed. But again, I love that. It's almost like teasing the audience. It's almost like misleading them, you know.
Yeah,
did that pop out to you this time?
Yeah, it absolutely did. And I think it also, and I agree with you, it informed the audiences so much. It also informed the audience, of when, it's almost giving away the ending. I don't know if I should say anything.
That's all right. I'm all spoiler alerts on this podcast.
Okay. So it almost leads up to the ending when the condition of their regaining their friendship is that
I love that scene. Yeah.
But she keeps making excuses. Oh yeah, maybe we can have a drink then. It's like she keeps missing the point.
Exactly.
And it's frustrating, but
yeah.
And so is she going to be like Imelda Staunton and walk out? She says to Imelda Staunton as she leaves the office, same time next week, but it's up to you.
It's up to you, yeah.
And we never see her again. Yeah. And we never hear about her again.
And I think that's perhaps what he's saying about people who need help. It's down to whether you want the help. And I think Mary knows enough that it's hard to say because it's really ambiguous. I think Mary knows that she needs help, but is she really going to do something about it? Because even in the end, even though it's, she's there having dinner with everyone, she still, the camera hangs on her. She still looks very sad. So,
yeah,
but you're right. That's true. That one line of "let's go for a drink." It's no. First of all, you're an alcoholic, which is not addressed. I love that. I love that it's not addressed, and clearly is not really aware. I don't know what. Do you think she knew enough about herself that things needed to change, or do you think she just is totally still not there?
No, I think she's not there. I think she kept on saying, I know. Yeah, I know that. She was never.
Yeah.
She didn't thank her. She didn't say. She kept on saying, I know, as if let's move on. It's like my 13-year-old, 14-year-old daughter, right? When you say, do this, I know. You didn't do the dishes, I know. It doesn't mean change. It means I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Also, I wondered if Ronnie.
The brother. Yeah,
Ron's brother.
Yeah,
because they were finding each other, Mary and Ronnie. Now, is Ronnie going to be his salvation, or is Ronnie going?
I wondered about that too.
Or is he going to be end up like Kent?
Yeah.
Is she going to dismiss him because he's not attractive? Although she does say you have a nice face. You have Tom's face.
Yeah.
And Tom is someone who we might assume is why she loves Joe. Is because Joe reminds her of Tom.
I didn't even think of that. See that this is what's so great about these films. It's the ambiguity and it's the behavior and it's the not spelling things out that lead to these conversations, but don't just work purely in a thought-provoking way. Are totally emotional. Like I think I posted on Twitter. I was weeping watching.
You did,
watching. Yeah. It's just that he just can get right to the core of someone where, and they can't necessarily express it, but the audience, again, if they spend enough time and are interested enough, we get it.
Yeah.
We know what she needs to do, but it's not. It's easy to say that objectively when you're not inside of it. But that's a good, but when I first saw this, I thought she was someone who only liked younger men, perhaps. But now when I see it, because of Joe, but now when I see it again, I don't think that's necessarily the case, because she talks about her husband being older. She still talks about him very fondly, that even in his 60s, a very attractive guy, and so on and so forth. And I just think, then I thought, well, maybe anyone who's interested in her, she rejects. Like with
That's
Ken,
right.
that could be a possibility. I was actually talking to my wife about this, because we both have known someone for many years who's exactly like Mary. Like literally, if she has a problem like Mary with the car, on and on, like just not being able to take the social cues of, okay, we heard it, let's move it on.
Yeah.
But I know there's so much with Mary that is again not cleaned up, not resolved. Her opinions are complex and contradictory. It's the people we know, right? I mean, I'm sure you've known some Marys in your life, Tom.
I might have been a Mary a few times in my life. And that's one of the things I did think about while watching this movie, and not just a Mary, but a Kent. When have I not read the cues, or when have I read the cues but went, nope? If I present myself as confident, well, that's kind of a male thing too. The difference between confidence and crossing the line. Let's just make it clear, I've never crossed the line, but I watched this movie not only saying, wow, I know people like that, but also with the awareness that I can be people like that. And I have been people like that to certain people, right? I remember a girlfriend breaking up with me that I was living with at the time. And I phoned my friend who was throwing a party for her office. And I went, I can't be alone tonight. And I really hope I went to that party and just sort of, but I was a downer. I know I wasn't laughing and drinking. I may not have been talking about my relationship, thank God. Maybe I did. I don't remember. But that's what I thought about. I thought, wow, I was Mary at that situation. So yeah, I know people like Mary, but more frightening, I can be like Mary. I could be like Kent.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. I mean, I think we all have all of these characters in us, and I think that's why it's so universal, and go out on the street and see people like this every day. Did you think that he was saying something more clear with Secrets and Lies as opposed to Another Year? Do you think Another Year was a more sort of much more of an ambiguous film, a story, as opposed to the other one?
I don't know about ambiguity, but I do think that Another Year was more commercial. And I thought that the framing of Another Year was more traditional, right? It for the same time next year, the Four Seasons, both of them lesser films, but so I don't know if anything was clearer. Because I think in Secret and Lies, if it was a traditional story being told, we would have confirmation about the peculiarities of family and how that can extend beyond racial differences, cultural differences, skin color. Those weren't really things that seemed that interesting to Leigh. And the development of family and relationships was more within the context of the understood family rather than the new family that was entering. So yeah, I think I think things are clearer actually in another year. I think the ending is ambiguous intentionally, but you know, I wanted to read recently, but when there is an uncertainty, when you don't finish something in your life, whether it's career or you know, when people talk about having closure, if there's not closure, that emotion, that feeling is almost becomes stagnant, almost hangs with you for the rest of your life. And I think in cinema, when that happens, like in The Bicycle Thief, and in Mike Leigh films, and in a lot of Paul Thomas Anderson films, when it refuses, that kind of ending refuses to categorize the film as a certain type and in a certain era. So 40 years from now, another year is going to be as relevant that 40 years from now as it is now, as it was 20 years ago when it came out. More than no.
Yeah,
Almost.
it was actually 11, 2010.
Yeah.
So it was 11. Yeah, that's, you know, that's very well said. I mean, the only reason for me Secrets and Lies popped out more, it was because as we were saying, all those missing pieces of the puzzle internally for these people, with the, you know, lack of a sister, lack of a child, lack of a, you know, for me felt like it was somewhat come together towards the end. Much more so than this film, where it's much more really nothing is resolved, other than Mary perhaps is somewhat sees maybe that she needs help or she needs to change. Another, talking about Ronnie, I also loved the part of the son, who to me, well, I haven't seen him in any other films, but had so much. His anger was violent. Like it's not like he even says much, but in the way he comes into the church, like not even realizing that the door is loud as he closed it, almost trying to grab the attention subconsciously. And he doesn't even say much, but you feel as if he's going to punch everybody. Like, you know, how did you take to that?
I think this is another example of Mike Leigh throwing in a character that doesn't really make sense to anybody, and a studio or another filmmaker would say, well, we got to do something with that character. Why is he there? Or he would get edited out.
Yeah.
I actually wasn't as and I don't think it matters, but I think I kind of went, what was that about? And maybe that was the feeling I was supposed to be left with, because I didn't know why he was angry. I don't know who the bad guy was in that.
Yeah,
was
you don't
Ronnie?
know. Yeah.
What happened? Why is the kid so angry?
Yeah.
Ronnie didn't look like he was the greatest of fathers, by the way.
No.
but as
you know,
as he interacted with Mary, he became warmer.
He starts to loosen up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah, and the fact that he hugged. See, I had no problem imagining Tom hugging anyone. I have a problem imagining Ronnie hugging someone.
Yeah.
And the fact that he accepted this hug from his brother, I didn't know what that was about either. You know, these are things that I would see at a party or at a funeral and go, Jesus, what was that about? Why did Ronnie let Tom hug him? What's up with Ronnie's son, man? What did he do to that kid?
That's exactly
never have an answer.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it again, it's those moments that we see in life that we can't explain, like what was going on there was, and we start to piece together a potential relationship. Oh, well, the son's a jerk, but then, what kind of a father was he? What did he do that the son is like this? He doesn't even know anything about him. Mary later on asks him, is your son married? He says he doesn't know.
Yeah.
So I love that, because there's there's no answers. And as you put so well, is you know, like you see it at a funeral. What was that? And no one's gonna know. But I really like that he had that. I mean, if he didn't have it, I would still really love the film. But I just think, why not? I mean,
Yeah.
it's things that happen, and it's behavior, and it's relationships, and it's certainly, you know, reasonable that he'd have a son and that would happen, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, just these are just incredible movies.
Yeah, they both are phenomenal. They aren't films that I would like if my sister or someone phoned up and said, oh, recommend a good movie. These would not be on my list for them. But there are
Right.
certain, you know, people I know. Well, my sister has patience, and she would. But people I know that are willing to put effort into. I know a lot of people who don't want to put effort into watching a movie.
Right.
Frankly, I don't find any effort in watching a Cassavetes or to Paul Thomas
Yeah.
Anderson.
No, me neither.
But you know, I recognize they're not everyone's taste.
Yeah. 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 I know. You know, well said. But sure enough, if you're a cinephile or a cinema lover, and and if you like Cassavetes or PTA, or you know, that Mike Leigh is certainly someone I think a lot of people would be interested in. I know that a number of his films are on the Criterion Channel. I think Another Year used to be, but it is on Amazon now. But Secrets and Lies, on Prime, Amazon Prime, and Secrets and Lies, people can find on the Criterion Channel, as well as a number of other Mike Leigh films. Well, Tom, this was great.
Straight Story, by the way.
Is it on the Criterion Channel?
Leigh film.
Oh yeah, that's right. It is. Okay, I'm going to make an effort to watch it this month.
Okay.
Well, Tom, thanks again. I really appreciate you coming on and talking about these two movies in such great detail and length, and with so much passion. And I had a great time. So thank you again.
I always have a good time. Robert, congratulations on your new format. And I look forward to the next invitation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll definitely have you back very, very soon. And for those of you who commented and left questions, thanks so much. If you haven't subscribed already, if this is your first time on my channel, please consider doing so by pressing the subscribe button, which you can find right next to the description box below. And if you're watching the replay right now, you'll see the my head floating to your top left here. You can also click on that to get an instant subscription. And I'm also now on an entertainment app called MoBFi TV, which is on Roku and Apple TV and a number of platforms. So the link is in the description box about details where you can find it on that app. Okay, well, thanks again, everyone, and we'll see everyone soon.